to day 4. As you remember, yesterday we created the proposal. It's all saved. It's saved as a PDF. I looked back over it again this morning. I'm happy with it. I made any changes and it's already saved. The proposal is done. So today we're going to finish up the outline and see if we have time to get into the rough draft. But first I want to show you something fun that will help the outline much easier for us to go through. And that is my hamburger philosophy. I know you're saying, of course you do. All right, so the very first sentence, marked here, is my idea. Okay, so back up to this section 2. All of this is the definition of terms, the summary of the film. Summary includes, in my own words, a brief overview, a bit more detail when we bring the major players. Because remember, I've got to remember that the audience has heard of Training Day, but they don't necessarily know the film. So I can't assume that they know anything. And of course, one of the big moments in the screenplay had to do with Roger. And then we mentioned this, how Alonzo started off as a well-intentioned cop, saving the goddamn world, as he says. Moving on, through Roger, Jake learned that Alonzo had once been in his shoes because of his world, blah, blah, has changed. Good cops, Alonzo, good. And then then we stop by explaining this, where the table turned, and that is when Alonzo turned on Jake. And that concludes the summary of the film. And this business about shooting him, I'm not sure this is in the right place, so I always take those and I just color them because I'm not sure that's where they're supposed to go. So we'll color it in blue, just in case that's not supposed to be there. All right, I'll keep moving on. Okay, the world of the story now. I have claimed that the antagonist is the world of the story. Not Alonzo, not Roger, but the world. I start with what the opposition would say. A number of critics analyze Alonzo from the perspective of an antagonist who thwarts the progress of a naive younger officer by attempting to teach the rookie the rules of the Echo Park world. Mentor turned antagonist. What is this? Let me see. I'll be right back. Okay, so that's my statement in my own words. And again, I'm looking at what the opposition says. I've got to prove that at least my idea is valid. So, this is the logical progression. Statement in my own words. A number of critics analyze Alonzo from the perspective of an antagonist who thwarts the progress of a naive younger officer by attempting to teach the rookie the rules of the Echo Park world. And the middle part of that hamburger, this part, is going to be the article written by Scott Myers. A streetwise crooked cop, in his article movie story types buddy picture, Scott Myers described Alonzo as a mentor turned antagonist character that has the unpredictable scene-stealing badass and gives Hoyt his obstacles and conflict, tests that grow into increasingly unethical and life-threatening situations. That was his statement. That's the proving statement for this. Now I'm going to write in my own words what I think that proves. I see where Myers believes that Alonzo was once a mentor. Myers admits that Alonzo was once upon a time a well-intentioned police officer. I agree that a well-intentioned character would be in a protagonist position. Myers suggests that Alonzo changed into a cop on the take. What caused him to change? The world of the story. On page 17 of the script, Alonzo presented his apprentice with a choice. Right? Do you see that big thing that I'm saying? I'm saying that he's a protagonist, not an antagonist. And I'm using that article, and I'm going to argue with that article. On page 17 of the script, Alonzo presented his apprentice with a choice. Either learn the exciting and dangerous job, or you going to be passing out baseball cards and carrying old ladies' groceries like the rest of the Washington's flooded the street with the streets with? See where that argument went, y'all? We started with my statement. Many people would say that he's an antagonist. This is what one of those people said. I agree with part of what they said because it proves my point that were it not for the rough world of the story, Alonzo likely would have been the wonderful police officer that he started out to be. And there's my proof there. So I have an article and words from the script. And then I wrap it all up. It is clear from this speech that Alonzo has working knowledge of a level of professionalism that included easy tasks. Because of circumstances, Alonzo was taken from the safe world to the hellscape of Echo Park. Point made. Thus, now we're moving on to the next logical point. Okay, this little bit right here, thus the world of the story, the culture is the antagonist. I've already said that. I don't need that here, but I don't need to throw it away either. What can I do with it? That's right, I can cut it from there, and I can put it in the conclusion. I love when I write an essay and I get down to the conclusion, and there's already some stuff in there. Just love it. Gives me some options. Okay, let's go back to where we were. I'll be right back. And this is my final statement on that point. Myers actually proves my point that the world of the story was the antagonist when he described Alonzo's relationship with Jake. Alonzo, quote, must control the rules, control his partner, control his friends, control his enemies, and even control the odds that he will be caught breaking the law. Anyone, including Officer Hoyt, who refuses complete submission to Harris's personal plight of anarchy will be sliding down a slippery slope of self-serving justice. Now, this business about Alonzo taking the oath and everything else, it doesn't belong there. I've made this point. So let me look at this and see where else this might go. This is the oath that he took. Remember? This needs to go in one of his, in the proving points, not in the definition of terms. I'm still in the definition of terms. And the definition of terms shouldn't be much more than let me see. Okay, this I'm going to make pink. Or we're making it blue. We're making it blue. It doesn't belong there, but I'll see where it does belong later. See the beauty of an outline? You come up and you go, wait a minute, I just proved that. I still haven't looked at this video. Okay. Alonzo was successful in his job, and according to his friend Roger, was excited about justice. Alonzo explained Jake that he learned early on that a careless move is a death sentence in this world. In the car in the first visit, God offers wisdom if you hide. This is his tragic flaw. So, do I want to bring up his tragic flaw here in the definition of terms? Well, this was all to prove that the world of the story is antagonist, not him. Let's think. You think and I'll think. If you don't hide your love deep inside, maggots out here will find it and chew it up. And it must, this is my statement, and it must therefore follow that but for the dangerous world, Alonzo would have not felt the need to hide his love and would likely have made more legitimate choices. Okay, so we have proved that that the world of the story is the antagonist and that he is a protagonist. Okay, that's this section in the definition section. We don't ever have to come back and prove it again. We can now, throughout the essay, freely refer to Alonzo as a protagonist. Right? This little law thing has to go somewhere. We're not sure what yet, so I'm going to leave it alone. Now, the next thing that we needed to prove in the definition of terms was that what is a tragic hero? And so, here's something that's interesting. When I need to look for a definition of the major point of my essay, never go to Wikipedia. That's not legitimate. But I went to the never fail Aristotle. The whole thing started with the Greeks and with Aristotle. So if I define my tragic hero by Aristotle's definition, you can't touch it, right? If I try to get some definition from Yahoo Answers, that has no credit, no credibility. So that's why I just went straight on to there. Okay, and that was in this website. Now I want to make sure that the reader knows that I'm using the Aristotelian definition. Okay, remember when I mentioned that that narcissistic greed was his downfall? And that kind of bothered me because that means I'm going to have to prove something. I'm going to have to prove narcissistic. I'm going to have to prove greed. But the main focus of this essay, which I know because I have a little sticky note right up there with the thesis statement, is that he's tragic. The narcissistic greed that he lives by is one of the reasons that he is going to have a downfall. But it doesn't take that long to prove the narcissistic greed. And remember, this is a very legitimate website. And what did I do as soon as I got over here? Just to remind you today, I copied it. I go back over to my little EasyBib, which I always open up first, so it's on my left. It makes it easy. I go up here. I'm going to create a new citation. I'm going to only show this one just to remind you. Paste, search, and when it finds it, click cite. Hopefully everything's going to be there. And it is. There's his name. Yay. Good. All right. Now I don't have to think about that ever again. All right. So that was my takeaway from that article, this one little bit that I can use right there. The competitive urge to prove oneself the biggest winner of them all may be driving up the executive compensation. But all I need, biggest winner of them all. That's really all I need. Go back over to my outline, and I'll decide later if I feel like I need to make it any more clear than that. I may think about it as I later go on, but okay. I'm going to fit that quote right in here. I'll be right back. I'll show you. Okay, so this is the definition of a tragic hero, and then we explain how Alonzo fits into that definition. Here's the definition, and then we go on with the character flaw makes it self-evident, scoffed at warnings and failed. Eventually, the Aristotelian tragic hero dies a tragic death. Just put that in quotes, since it's going to have to switch tense. Having fallen from that came from this. Alonzo fits the definition. He is good because his good intentions twisted into narcissistic greed. Okay, now the reader goes, what's narcissistic greed? As an article in Psychology Today specifies, the competitive urge to prove oneself the biggest winner of them all. If you can't beat them, join them. That's my own words. Okay? Okay, as an article in Psychology Today specified, well, it specifies in the present tense. Well, Alonzo had a competitive urge to prove oneself the biggest winner of them all. And that's the quote from Burgo. And this is where we're going to just change this. Instead of oneself, we're going to do that little thing that I taught you yesterday. And we're going to put that in brackets so that it fits into the sentence. Now, there's one thing that's wrong with this. Who can tell me what it is? We're going to change it to Times New Roman. What's wrong with this little bit? That's right. Psychology Today needs to be italicized. And we do that by clicking italics. Okay, beautiful. That's done. And we'll make a note when we do the rough draft if we need another little proving statement to get a little bit more into what a narcissistic greed is. We can do it. It was super easy to find, 2 seconds. Okay. And now we are going to do, this is going to be a quote from a reputable source who defines tragic hero. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's neat. So this was a transition into the next little section, which is where we're going to actually quote from a reputable source that defines Alonzo as the tragic hero. So we had tragic hero. We indicated that he's a narcissistic hero. And we have a Psychology Today report that says that. And now we're going to look at something from the actual story that shows him to be a tragic hero. Right, so we went from that he's a tragic hero and that he's a tragic hero operating in a dystopian world. And Alonzo survived and thrived in a dystopian world. Echo Park was depicted as a war zone with boundaries and populated with gangs, crackheads, and thieves. A dystopia is an imagined community. That's my statement. And now the middle part of the hamburger. A dystopia is an imagined community or society that is dehumanizing and frightening. That quote came from Master Class. Alonzo described the world best as he drove Jake into the dangerous neighborhood that is the world of the story. He explained. And you'll notice again that we just have a little bit of dialogue. Again, I can't stress it enough. So many times I see students that they just put way too much in there. It's not necessary to prove the point. All I need to prove is that from Alonzo's point of view and from Jake's point of view, this was a dystopian world. Alonzo says, this is the heart right here, the headquarters. A lot of murder investigations lead here. One way in, no way out. Page 56. Alonzo wanted to teach Jake the ways of this world to see if he would be a fit partner. How does that follow? I'm not sure that needs to be there. This story of Alonzo's character develops tragically. And this is where we list the 3 things that we'll be covering. And I hope to goodness this is the end of the definition of terms. With this story develops tragically, he 1, right, 2, and 3. And I changed this 3 just a little bit to go to that Aristotelian definition. So I'm going to leave that here, and then I'm going to add that little Aristotelian bit in there too. There's lots of different ways to describe. Okay. All right. That takes care of that one. Let me clean it up. I'll be right back. Okay, so that is going to conclude this part of the definition of terms that has to do with the dystopian world and that he is a tragic character within a dystopian world. And we have that little quote from the script. And then we continued that on with Alonzo wanted to teach Jake realize the dangers of this world. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is the lead in to our major sections of the essay. Within all this stuff, just take that all out of there. Within this dystopian world, Alonzo's character developed tragically. He failed. This is the 3 things. He made choices which bring about his be right back. Okay, so that little section is completed. And now we have the paragraph that is going to lead in to our analysis of the 3 aspects of his character. So here's what we have. Within this dystopian world, Alonzo's character developed tragically. He failed in this epic struggle against fate. of fate. An example of hubris, and I found hubris because I just jumped out there to find the Aristotelian names for tragic characters, and this is where I found that. So this is where those came, and of course I immediately cited that in EasyBib so that I could go back and forth and use these definitions as I need. An example of hubris, excessive pride and disrespect for the natural order of things. Alonso was so fixated on projecting his royal image that he ignored the essentials. And the reader knows that they're going to be learning more about that in this section. Number 2. Alonso made choices which brought about his destruction. Hamartia refers to a hero who decides on a course of action that causes him to be careless. Those choices led to his demise. And 3. The fated protagonist must die in a most violent overkill, a punishment that the protagonist cannot avoid, usually occurring as a result of his hubris. The audience witnessed this eternal drama by relating to the fate and stuff of all humans. The audience experiences catharsis for the inevitable downfall of the protagonist. And then there's the transition sentence. An understanding of Alonso as a tragic hero begins with an analysis of the challenges he faced in Echo Park. All I need to do now is go clean this up, and I'm ready to move on. What do I do when I clean this up? Well, I go over here, I make it Times New Roman, I make it 14, I take away any highlights, I make this into like a paragraph. I'll do that, be right back. So this is what it's going to look like as a paragraph. Of course, it will be double spaced. And I just want you to watch me clean this up. I highlight this. I go up to Times New Roman. I make it 14. Eventually it's going to be 12, but I need to be able to see it. No color. And I'm going to select this. No. Why is that continuing? We don't want any bold. Beautiful. There it is. Do you see how that outline created itself into a logical transition paragraph that takes the reader into the next section? Isn't that fantastic? We would never have been able to do that without an outline to guide that logic along the way. And I don't know about you, but whenever I do something like that, I just get such a good feeling of accomplishment. You know, I don't need the words transition sentence, right? I just wanted to show you what it looks like when it becomes a paragraph. It's kind of lovely, isn't it? Just one paragraph, and there's the transition sentence. An understanding of Alonso as a tragic hero begins with an analysis of the challenges he faced in Echo Park. I love it. Okay. Be right back, and we'll keep moving on. Okay, so we're beginning the meat and potatoes of the essay, having defined all of our terms and proved what we had to prove. We're ready to move on. And, of course, we had decided that the two words that needed to be defined in this were epic and fate. So we had one. I'm going to look it over. You look it over too. Okay, so the sentence in my own words is this, and I'm going to prove the epic effort with this quote that we found from Britannica. And then we have the writer's intent and the world that remember, we're talking about a film, so we want to pay attention to what the writer wanted to create. Alonso sought to rule or at least intimidate the world. I loved that picture. I got so lucky with that because it shows the world of the story and it shows his sort of cocky attitude in that world. To a hostile dog-eat-dog culture where nobody really had his back. To survive, he dressed the part so that he could command respect in the world. The playwright made his intent clear in the following excerpt, as well as the costume model image on the right. So this is from script page 5. And this is in all caps here, but we can't have all caps in the essay because it disrupts the reader. It looks like you're yelling at the reader in the way that language is used. So I'm going to have to fix that. I'll be right back. And this is how I got out of it. I didn't start the quote until the words. That way I could take this out of all caps and then have the important part quoted. Okay, the reason we put this in here, or I put this in here, is because an epic hero is on a journey. And an epic indicates that we're on a journey. And the epic hero has to have a mighty steed, a horse that they ride in on, or a chariot if it's been her, or whatever it is. The tragic hero needs to have some sort of transportation. So this I discovered was 78. Okay, so this epic hero drove a 1978 Chevy Monte Carlo. The modification of his vehicle was tracked out with hydraulics and Dayton wire wheels. To his demise, the car did not include bulletproof windows. And this is where the epic hero is careless. Because instead of, if I'm going to go into a war zone, I would like to have some armor around me. And so this is the first point that I make about that. About the epic hero and how the epic hero moves around in the world. This little bit right here needs to be an explanation of what Alonso thought the world was and how the world really is. So I had initially just put in this little bit of dialogue, but I don't think it makes my point. So I'm going to add that whole little bit of scene. I'll show you. I'll be right back. So it's important that I include all of this. Do you see why? Because I'm saying that Alonso thinks these people are his friends. He thinks they are loyal to him. He thinks they think he's wonderful. So this shows that Alonso did something to help the gangster's cousin. Alonso pushes open the gate. The gangsters regard him coldly. And this I have to keep in all caps because it's an actual excerpt from the script. I hope you see why we needed to include all of this. They show one face to him here, and then they show what they really think here. Okay, good. And then that's my statement after that. Example, because we can't have an example without a statement after it. Now is the next point that I'm going to make about this section. He meets other authority figures in the world at a restaurant. Because of his pride, he failed to heed warnings from. And the way I found this was I couldn't remember when exactly this happened in the script, but I could remember Stan. So when I went over to my Word copy of the script, I just came over here and typed in Stan, and that took me to that scene. Some things weren't quite that easy to find, but, you know, anyway, back to the outline. And this is the dialogue where Stan warned. And this is very important because this is what makes him tragic, that he pays no attention to this warning. Okay. And then my statement is, because of his pride and ego, Alonzo paid no attention and moved on with his plan to find and arrest the Sandman. You can't have plan and then plan. Let me fix that. Okay, so now I'm saying because of his pride and ego, Alonzo paid no attention and moved on with his plan to find and arrest the Sandman. He ignored warnings about the Russians, who were angry after a botched Las Vegas operation. Alonzo's schedule for the day, he hoped, further establish and reward him as the detective who took down the Sandman, ultimately leading to his demise when the Russians took their pound of flesh. Now, this scene, there's one other, and that is at the end, the third point, where we say that the audience pities him because this is way overdone. He failed to give these people some money, and for this, he's going to have all this happen. That's way out of line. So I'm either going to leave this image here or I'm going to put it at the end. I don't know. But we're making the point right here that he's not paying any attention to the warnings because of his ego that wants him to become the man who took down the Sandman. And that was the end of that section. With the two things. He ignores warnings and he doesn't prepare his transportation effectively. Right? And that's it. There's that little section. All finished. I'll scroll through it so you can see how it's all finished. Very nice. Nice blend of images and quotes from the script and definitions. Okay. Now we move on to the next, the second of the three tragic flaws that he has. We're going to choose these two scenes. Betrays Jack by asking his puppets to kill him, Jake. And he gave Jake credit for the prevention of that rape at the beginning. So these should switch, shouldn't they? This is at the beginning. This is at the end. I'm going to complete this section, and then I'll come back and show you what I've done. Okay, so we're in this section. Hero makes choices. And this is where he we haven't done this yet because I remembered what we had. B, A, and then B. Remember, I switched those. He betrayed Jake by asking his puppets to kill him. Now, we have to let the reader know what happened. This whole thing about setting up his kill happened after the scene with Roger. So number one, in my logic, Alonzo returned to Roger's home to locate the drug money and confiscate drugs. Alonzo planned to use the drug money to pay the Russians. It was important that Jake not only witness this event, but take some of the cash for himself. Then Alonzo wanted Jake to be named the shooter and promised that the story would be reported as this. Remember? That used to be up here, but it wasn't in the right place. It was important information, but it was in the wrong place. So all we have to do is just cut it from here because we found the right place for it to go. I just wanted to show you that real quick. Okay, proving that he makes choices which bring about his destruction. We start with Alonzo giving Jake credit for the prevention of the rape attempt. And this is the actually words for that. But this is what gave me the instruction that told me what to write. Eager to show off his new protege, Alonzo recounted an event from earlier in the day. Hold on. Right back. The collection of his colleagues who sat at the restaurant table with him were suitably amused. Alonzo told the story of earlier the day. We got to fix that. Suitably amused. Alonzo explained that when they drove by MacArthur Park, 7 miles from Echo Park location. How do I know that that's 7 miles from MacArthur Park to the actual center of the world of the story? I went to Google Maps. 7 minutes, not 7 miles, 7 minutes. And I can see the action that went from MacArthur Park, actually went from downtown to MacArthur Park to Echo Park. This is the world of the story. Okay? I'm just going to give that a quick citation. Just because I wouldn't know that without knowing that. Jake told Alonzo to stop the car. Jake then stopped the would-be assault. Later, when Alonzo was meeting with his fellow cohorts, he bragged about this episode. We're in MacArthur Park, and he starts screaming and jumps out. The directions are hooked. So is Jake, listening, sipping water. So I chase him down this alley, and holy shit, he's jamming. Kid's got a magic eye, and Alonzo refers to him as a prince. Whether Alonzo wanted to take credit for Jake's bravery or laughing at his naivete, Alonzo's need to boast the deeds of his apprentice prince would lead to his ultimate demise. Had Alonzo maintained his superiority, it would have been he who stopped the rape, not Jake. And if that was the story, his betrayal move would have been more successful. Because later in the day, Alonzo returned to Roger's home to locate the drug money and confiscate drugs. Alonzo planned to use the drug money to pay the Russians. It was important that Jake not only witness this event, but take some of the cash for himself. Alonzo wanted Jake to be named the shooter and promised that the story would be reported. As, second through is our new guy Hoyt, he dropped the suspect with some fine shotgun work. Unwilling to accept the blame, Jake, in a way, betrayed his partner by refusing to take orders. The image at right shows Jake's conflict as he was told to shoot Roger. Alonzo called one of his loyalists and planned Jake's murder. Alonzo called Smiley one of his loyalists and planned Jake's murder. The plan backfired, and it was Alonzo who was labeled as dishonorable. After killing Roger, Alonzo called his... Well, we don't know. We already said that. Already said it. The homies, as it turned out, were cousins of Letty, the young rape victim. Just as they were ready to kill Jake, Jake told them the story of their cousin. In a humanitarian moment, Smiley called Letty for the truth. And Letty's little dialogue is missing, so we need to go back and find that. Here it is. Back to the outline. I'm doing this slow, just so I can just show you how I do one. I don't like it when it looks like it was just magic. So that's how I just got that back. Have to mess around with when you change the font and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of hard. So this is her little speech. I'll play with this just a second, but we'll be right back. Smiley called Letty for the truth. There's her little speech. And what did this cop look like? He was a white boy. He looked young. Smiley looks at Jake. That's him. When Smiley and his crew freed Jake, the betrayed rookie ran out to find Alonzo. If Alonzo had taken the credit for Letty, Smiley and his crew would never have known that Alonzo, king of the jungle, did not lift a finger to save Letty. See? Point made. All right. Now, the second and last part of that is, we are energized by witnessing this eternal drama, for it encompasses the fate of stuff and of all humans. Okay, and this is where I went ahead and did some of this. Alonzo, we're doing this right now. I don't need this to be in. Because to be truly effective, narcotics. This is where he's telling Jake about what a narcotics detective must do. Was it Alonzo's fate to become a bad cop? And I went ahead and did this yesterday because I found that awesome website that explains the difference between destiny and fate. So, I don't need that highlighted anymore. Okay, so all of this explains the fate. Constitutionally unable to settle for a quiet desk job. He says that all the time. There were places he showed that he stood up. No longer choose. Alonzo decided to let them go, despite Alonzo revealed his fate. We're professional anglers. We reel in the big ones. Let's change that to Times New Roman. I do this here because whenever I get it into the rough draft, I don't want to have to deal too much with all that stuff. So let's just, okay, we're the real ones. What is the stuff of all humans? The second part of that statement. My experience, the humans I encounter. Remember, I can't say everybody. Everybody is 9 billion people. I can say in my own words, my experience and the experience of those directly around me in my inner circle. I encountered struggle with the same basic needs. According to Maslow, the higher levels of consciousness seek love and intimacy. Lots of wars. Okay. We're setting up this part of the little argument by saying, as a young police officer, Alonzo wanted to serve and protect. It was his life, his destiny. And where did we see that before, which was out of place? That's right. It's way up here, and I believe we colored it pink so we could easily find it. Well, we covered it blue. Okay, and now we find the place where it's supposed to be. So we're going to cut it from here and go back down where we just were and paste it as evidence that his intention, his destiny, when he started off, was to be a wonderful police officer. As a young police officer, Alonzo wanted to serve and protect. It was his life, his destiny. Okay, we got to have a proving statement there, right? How do I know that? Okay, well, for one thing, I have the oath that he took. Hold on, I'm going to move this picture out of my way. Let's take this out of this, no color. Okay. Okay, it's an oath. So we're not going to put quotation marks around it. We're actually going to center it and keep it in a block. Okay, I'll do that. I'll be right back. Okay, he took an oath. I'll not advocate nor become a member of any party or organization, political or otherwise, that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or the state of California by force or violence or other unlawful means. That's not the whole oath. The whole oath goes on forever. This is only the part that we need for our argument because it mentions the violence situation. That would have been great, the violence and situation, if he'd have been transferred to Beverly Hills, but he wasn't. He was assigned the dangerous world of the story. So this can go away. And because he was confident and charming. Okay. Take this away. This. This was his destiny to be a good cop. But one of the things that I read, the neat articles that I read on that, is that destiny becomes fate when choices are made. So, once he, if you can't beat him, join him, that's going to go right in there. It's going to be messy, but it's going to go in there. Okay? All right, just leave it alone. I'm going to have to fix it when we pop it into the rough draft anyway. Okay, that was his destiny. Why was it his fate to become a bad cop? And this is a 3-point argument, right? Alonzo was constitutionally unable to settle for a quiet desk job, obviously. In a number of places, he showed that he was swept up in a system that he did not want at first, but when he was young and eager to save the world. A turning point occurred in Alonzo's life, and he no longer had the chance to choose that safe option. After dealing with 2 low-level crack addicts, Alonzo decided to let them go. Despite Jake's eagerness to book them, Alonzo revealed his fate. We're professional anglers, Alonzo explained to Jake. We reel in the big ones. If I've already used that somewhere, I'll have to find that in the rough draft. So what is this stuff of all humans? In my experience, blah, blah, we've already gone over that. I went over that yesterday. Okay. I already did that with this whole psychological thing. And that shows how the energy, we're sad for him. And we're sad for him. And I found this neat little picture. We're sad for him because that's way over the top, right? Sure, I mean, whatever. It just, the audience is on the tragic hero's side at this moment, is what I'm saying. And I'm using that psychological study. Now I get down to the conclusion. I think, oh my gosh, not the conclusion. Oh no, I've already gotten through oh no, my gosh. And then I look, oh no, I have all kinds of stuff in here. I have all kinds of fun stuff that I've just pasted in here along the way that I can now use for my conclusion. How cool is that? I can't use this again. I already used it. But let's just see what all I put in here. Because as you remember, as I was researching, I was popping stuff into the conclusion. Now, in an essay of this length, the conclusion is going to be 1 paragraph. So some of this has to go, and some of it's going to stay. I'm going to do this, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I cut and pasted from that, all that stuff that I put down in the conclusion, and here's what I came up with. The story of a sad, tragic hero. Training Day introduced Alonzo as a world-wise instructor who showed a dark and dystopian world to his protege, rookie Jake Hoyt. From time to time, a protective fatherly figure, Alonzo drove Jake for the first time into the dangerous world of the story with compelling concern. Lots of eyes are on us right now. Never come in here without me. For your safety, I'm serious. Okay, what, do you have a golden pass? Little kid gives Jake an unsettling mad dog stare. Because I'm square with them. But they know if the line is crossed, I'm leading a platoon in here. Alonzo could not see himself as eye level with the citizens of this world. He wanted to be their protector, their judge, and their jury. Alonzo broke the one rule he compelled Jake to follow. Bad guys listening, don't trust the radios, never let anyone know where you're really at, ever. In the end, Alonzo was no match for the people he sought to control. Perhaps to protect. As a viewer, I sat in the audience who cried at the fall of the king of Echo Park. All right, that's it for today, kids. I'm going to save this, and tomorrow we'll work on the rough draft. That concludes this tutorial.